It's 6 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, DL Chapter 38, Section 18, and Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Select Board will be conducted both in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, or for those who wish, they may do so remotely. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C 38, Section 20F, to notifying the chair of a public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body, may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. This meeting is being recorded by the Berkshire Edge, the Berkshire Eagle, and the town of Barrington, among others. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. We're all in approval, so we don't in person, so we don't need a roll call vote for attendance. We're all here. We have minutes, approval of minutes. Does anyone have any changes or corrections before I start? No? So let's have one motion for all three, please.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of March 27, April 3rd, and April 10th, 2022.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Select Board's announcement statements. Garfield?
Nothing, thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, I got a couple things. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody involved in the Earth Day cleanup. DPW, everybody in Great Barrington, and the Housatonic the Beautiful for setting everything up, handing out the bags and cleaning it up. Also like just to have an educational moment as far as some things I found when we were doing the cleanup. So when curbing up after your dog, you get the matter into a bag, and then you actually got to take the bag to a disposal site.
Don't leave it.
We found about 15 or 16 of them flung into the side of the road or just on the side of the road. So just wanted to make sure that was clear for everybody. And then also nips. That was the big find this year with just on 2 streets between me and a few other participants. We counted over 150 nip bottles. So those things, yeah, they need to be disposed of properly also. So other than that, it was a beautiful day and tons of garbage picked up. So thank you.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Before we get lost in the meeting, Ed, I want to thank you for serving on this board for 9 years. We served together all that time, and I've really enjoyed it. I haven't always agreed, but we've been respectful, and I've really enjoyed it. And I want to tell you that it was an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. I have a 45-minute farewell speech planned for the end of the meeting.
Which I'll adjourn right before you even do it. Mark.
Okay, I have 3 very brief updates for the board this evening and the public. As far as Housatonic Waterworks goes, that's just a standing topic on my list, and I do not have anything to update the board with this evening. The annual town meeting, I did want to just take this opportunity to remind everyone that our annual town meeting will be held this coming Monday, May 1st at 6 o'clock at the Monument Mountain Regional High School. The warrant and our fiscal 24 budget or proposed budget is posted. Both are posted on our website. We'll be back inside the auditorium this year, and anyone that needs transportation to and from the town meeting can arrange for a ride by calling 413-591-3826, or they can reach out to my office and we'll help get them scheduled for transportation. And the last item I have on my list is the mattress and box spring disposal. We had to put a moratorium on disposal for a few months, but for anyone that missed it, we have been sharing announcements on our social media pages and our website recently. We've resumed collection of those items at our transfer station. The cost for disposal is $65, and disposal tags can be purchased at the town clerk's office during town hall business hours. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Public hearings. Adam Dion of National Grid requesting to install one joint owned pole on Seacon Road, beginning at approximately 30 feet north of the center line of the intersection of Seacon Road at Division Street and continuing approximately 438 feet in the west direction. Install pole number 21-55 and anchor in the public way on the north side of Seacon Road, approximately 30 feet from the pole number 21-50.
Steve, I'm gonna recuse myself from this item.
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
This was just, my name is Adam Dion, contractor for National Grid. This was just, the process, the scope of work for this was, a reconductor, upgrading the conductor on Seacon Road, and we just needed to install a pole and anchor on the north side of the road for a new angle that was created so we could move the wet pole out of the wetlands.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Got you out of here in record time. Licenses and permits. Andy Morrow for Murphy Leary American Legion's annual request to hand out poppies in Great Barrington in the village of Housatonic during the month of May. I don't know if Jim is substituting for Andy or just raise your hand if anybody's here from the Murphy Leary American Legion. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Andy Morrow for the Murphy Leary American Legion's annual request to hold a poppy boot drive on Main Street in Great Barrington on Saturday, May 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Rain date of Saturday, May 27, 2023 is also requested. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, next. Catherine Hand of Berkshire Cider Project, 58 State Road, North Adams, for special farm winery license for sale and sampling at the Great Barrington Farmers Market, 18 Church Street, beginning Saturday, May 13th, until Saturday, November 11th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Catherine, your mic is open.
If you want to just
Great.
give a little plug for what you're doing, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Fantastic. So I'm representing Berkshire Cider Project. We make hard cider up in North Adams. And we've been trying out various different farmers markets around the Berkshires. We've done the Pittsfield Farmers Market, West Stockbridge. We've done the winter farmers market in Great Barrington. All has gone really well, and we're super excited to add the Great Barrington market to our list. So we'll be selling hard cider in bottles to customers to take home to enjoy. We'd also like to be able to offer small samples, just a sip for folks to try, just so that they know what they're buying. It really helps us kind of explain what we do and helps us drive sales. So we'd love to be able to do that. And I think that's about it, but I'll take any questions.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
I make a motion to approve a special farm winery license for sale and sampling at the Great Barrington Farmers Market to Catherine Hand of the Berkshire Cider Project, beginning Saturday, May 13th until Saturday, November 11th from 9 to 1 p.m.
Second.
Any questions?
I just have one. I guess just want to make sure that there's someone there, obviously checking IDs, et cetera.
How's that work, Catherine?
Yep. Yeah, of course. Yep. We check IDs. For anyone who looks younger than 40, 45, we absolutely do. And we've never had any issues, but that that's our policy.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Heather Kowalski, 9 Pin Cider Works LLC, 22 Park Road, Chatham, New York, for a special farm winery license for sale and sampling at the Great Barrington Farmers Market, 18 Church Street, beginning May 13th until Saturday, May 13th until Saturday, November 11th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
I don't see Heather, but Jake has his hand up.
Okay. Jake, is this something you're representing Heather and 9 Pin Cider?
His name's on the application.
Yeah, is it? Okay.
Yep, this is Jake Samascot. So I'm with Samascot Orchards, and we're with 9 Pin. So we attend the Great Barrington Farmers Market. We have for the last few years, and we have sold hard cider there. We'd like to continue doing so.
And do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve a special farm winery license for sale and sampling at the Great Barrington Farmers Market to 9 Pin Cider Works LLC from beginning Saturday, May 13th until Saturday, November 11th from 9 to 1 p.m.
Second.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'll ask the same question as they did. You have someone there qualified or whatever, gonna take check IDs, please?
Yes, yep. All of our staff will check IDs.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Jake.
Thank you.
Oscar Halig, Janice Martinson for the Mahawi Performing Arts Center and their request for a temporary weekday entertainment license for their annual gala on July 15th, 2023 from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Memorial Field, Bridge Street, Great Barrington.
Okay, Oscar and Janice, you should be good to go.
Both of you are unmuted. If someone would like to give a little plug for the event, tell us what you're doing.
Sure, this is actually Diane Wardis. Janice Martinson is unable to make it. I will be working with Oscar and the Mahawi team on our annual gala, and Oscar can provide some details, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
much similar to last year, 4 o'clock in the Memorial Field. Everybody will be moving up to the theater by 8, so it'll be quiet and over in a timely fashion. And it's an important event for the organization and for all those who attend.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve a one-day all alcoholic license for the annual gala on July 15th, 2023 from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. to Oscar Halig and Janice Martinson for the Mahawi Performing Arts Center.
Second. Okay, we have to do the entertainment next then.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Split that up.
Any questions of either Diana or Oscar? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead, the second motion.
I make a motion to approve the temporary weekday entertainment license for the annual gala on July 15th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Memorial Field to Oscar Halig and Janice Martinson of the Mahawi Performing Arts Center.
Have a second? No second, sorry. That's okay. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
So it's unanimous. Good luck, Oscar. Janice.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Diane. Nice.
Bye-bye.
Barry Chamberlain for the Great Barrington Firefighters Association request for a temporary entertainment license for the annual car show on August 3rd, 2023 from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. This request includes closing Main Street from Cottage to Bridge Streets, including Castle and Railroad Streets. Barry, do you have anything you want to add?
It's going to be identical to what we've done successfully for 14 years already.
And you don't have a rain date?
Yes, there should be the August 10th.
That's okay. It's probably on the application. It's not on the agenda. So you have a motion to include the rain date.
I make a motion to approve a temporary entertainment license for the annual car show on August 3rd from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. as well as a rain date of August 10th from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. To Terry Chamberlain for the Great Barrington Firefighters Association.
Second. Okay, just the application says August 11th. You said the right thing.
It's the 10th.
It is
Thursday.
Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's August 10th, you were correct. So I have a motion and a second. Any questions of Terry? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Terry, good luck.
Thank you.
You're promising sunshine,
Pray for
right?
no rain,
Yeah, exactly,
so that we don't have to use the rain date.
exactly. Whatever.
Thank
you
you.
do.
Thank you.
Adrian Misakongo of the Elm Restaurant for a request for an annual weekday entertainment license at 20 Railroad Street, Great Barrington, from Monday to Saturday, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m.
I don't see Adrian in the list.
Is anyone from the Elm here? Just raise your hand. Is everyone comfortable doing this without that?
No,
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 that's all fixed, so we will put this off for.
no big deal. I think you need to show up.
Besides, I mispronounced his name. Okay. Let's see, new business. Recreational cannabis and Campaign Railroad Youth Project.
So Amanda's here on the line. She's here to talk about the impacts of the cannabis industry on our youth here in South County. Amanda, you are good on our end.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I'm Ann Campaign. I'm from Railroad Street Youth Project. We also are the home of the South Berkshire Community Health Coalition. And I'm here because I keep running into Ed on the street, and Ed keeps asking me questions about the data that we have. And so Railroad Street has been part of a countywide collaborative to collect local level data on risk and protective factors, as well as use rates for alcohol, cannabis, nicotine, and other drugs among teens, 8th grade through 12th graders. The first year we collected data was 2007. I'm not going to go back that far, but we have a lot of context to think about what's happening in our community at this moment and how we might understand what data we do have. So Ed's question has been to me, has the legalization of recreational cannabis sales had an impact on youth in our community? For a little bit of background, Railroad Street takes a public health approach to the question of any substance use, including alcohol, and including the question of legalization. So when this was coming up on ballot measures and the debate was really, is this good? Is this bad? It was often a moral debate. Railroad Street's position was, from a public health perspective, legalization is important and it's something that should happen. And it's something that means that we can also take a public health perspective to prevention in the same way that we do to alcohol use among teens. So cannabis can be, moderate cannabis use is not a problem for adults, and we can also together as a community successfully prevent, reduce, and delay use among youth for whom it is a health concern. So our work spans the pro-social work we do at Railroad Street, which is anything that is a space where young people can engage in a substance-free setting to do a pro-social activity, and that includes our apprenticeship programs, the skate park, the drop-in center, our youth operational board, our mentoring programs, all those kinds of things. But we also do public health work through the coalition, where we're thinking about how we shift the underlying risk and protective factors. So when answering this question, the first thing I really wanted to say is we should be thinking about how we think about impact. And so in this case, I think the way we need to be thinking about impact on youth is in terms of the four main risk factors that are driving a lot of behaviors in our community, which are related to community norms favoring drug use as perceived by youth, youth perception that parent attitudes favor drug use, at the individual level, youth attitudes favorable to drug use, and then how the extent to which young people perceive drug use to be a low risk activity. For this question around cannabis specifically, I think it also makes sense to be looking at this data in relationship to when we actually start having vendors making legal recreational sales. And so for Great Barrington, our first host agreement was in June of 2018, and the cluster of openings happened 2019 to 2021, right leading up to and in the beginning of the pandemic. And that's going to be important because lockdown, what our data does show us is that that first year where there was lockdown and young people were not in school, we see there's just a lot of things that are different about that year and changes in behavior. So I think what I really want to say about that is that we need to be thinking about this period of what was happening 2019, which in my case, that means the school year that was like 2018 to 2019 in the data. What was happening then, and what does it look like now, knowing that there's some weirdness around the pandemic in between, and that weirdness also aligns with when we actually see the biggest shift in our community in terms of vendors opening and sales. We also have to think about prevention. So as I mentioned, Railroad Street's been engaged in prevention work in this community for a long time. And we approached this issue from the beginning of debates about legalization from a prevention public health lens. So we also have success in prevention happening at the same time that we have some risk factors changing. And then I think the last thing to look at this moment is use rates, because we're really only at the beginning of change. And so I can tell you what we're seeing this year, but I think we'll see impact play out over use rates more in the coming data sets, and that will help us see how well we're balancing effective prevention with the way risk increases. So going back to the risk factors, and given the time frame, I think these 4 risk factors are really the first place to look for early indicators of increased or reduced risk. So when it comes to community norms and the sense youth have that they do or do not favor drug use, this had been coming down since a high of 61% in 2015, but since shops opened, it started moving back up. So it's gone up 10 points since 2019, when it was at a low of 46%, and it's now it's gone back up to 10 points, and it's now at 54%. The low was at 46%. And we've gone from 8 points above the nation. So we also look at ourselves in comparison to the national average. So we've gone from being 8 points over the nation in 2019 to 16 this year. So we're seeing change in the wrong direction there. In terms of how young people are perceiving their parents' attitudes to be favorable or not favorable to drug use, this is also increasing. So in the 2017 to 2019 block of time, this was around 40% or so. And in 2023, we see this go up to 44%, and it's 13 points over the nation. Among youth, in terms of their individual attitudes around drug use, between 2011 and 2019, we saw a steady and significant decline, and this was really big. It was 60% at the start of that time period, and it went to a low of 40%. And it's now starting to climb. It's up to 46%, and it's 10 points over the nation. And then around youth perception of risk, we also saw a decline from the mid-60s high prior in their first chunk of data to a low of 56% in 2019. And then again, remember, this is when we start to see the cluster open. It's now at 68% and 13 points over the nation. So again, in terms of these risk factors, which have been drivers in our community for a long time, we are seeing movement that's not in the ideal direction. The backstory is that in general, South County has had persistently high substance use rates across types of substances when compared to the nation and also when compared to the county. So for example, in 2011, which is the start of this data set I was working with, we had 50% of 12th graders were using cannabis and 30% of 10th graders. But this is one of the places where we've seen, I think we've done a good job as community over time. We were bringing use rates down. So there's two ways you want to look at use rates. You want to pay attention to lifetime use. So that's, has somebody ever used a substance at all, even once? But more significantly, students who reported using a substance within the last 30 days. And when we look at this for cannabis in our data set from this year, 30-day cannabis use is 37% higher among South County teens than it is nationally. And additionally, among those who have ever tried cannabis, South County youth are more likely to have used cannabis within the last 30 days, with 68% of lifetime users having used within the past month, compared to 50% nationally. We saw a steep drop off in all substance use in 2021, which I think it really has to do with access and the lockdown. So we're across the board seeing substance use go up again in this year's data. And that is also true for cannabis, and it's coming in very, very close to, and in some cases higher than, the 2019 use data. The most important part of this that I think we need to be looking at and like just watching as a community is that this is shifting for 8th graders a bit more. And historically, 8th grade has actually been the one place where our teens are using at low rates similar to the nation. And so seeing this shift, the 8th graders are using at 2015 rates in the most recent data set, and it is over the nation by a bit. We're finishing up a community assessment, so we have some focus group data. We interviewed young people, and we also interviewed parents and then other community stakeholders that work in related fields. And the focus group data confirm that cannabis use remains an issue among youth, even as if we're comparing to 2011, we're doing much better. In one group made up of middle and high school students, they described the rapid increase in dispensaries in South County as confusing. For example, on Main Street, there's a dispensary alongside a toy store, and at the coffee shop next door, you might have folks smoking outside at the back, not to call anybody else. It's legal out, it's legal. And then also they reported seeing open use in parking lots. And they described that as mixed messaging about community norms and expectations. So that's my summary. I have a little bit of information about where young people are getting it. 18% report getting cannabis directly from a store. 24 give money to somebody over 21. 14% get it from their parents at home with permission, and 18 get it from their parents at home without permission. But most youth are getting it from somebody they know under 21 or somebody they know over 21. So that's my summary. And however you want to lead this from here, Steve and Ed, is up to you.
Yeah, I think one of the things we need to do is see the report. There's a lot of numbers there, and I think we'd like to look at it. So if you could send it to us and we'll post it on our website also, that would be great.
Sure.
Questions?
Can I ask a few leading questions?
Yeah.
It isn't good for young people, right? You said it's not harmful of limited use with adults. It is if you're younger.
Yeah, so from a health perspective, the thing that we want to be paying attention to are a couple of things. The first is brain development, and cannabis is like, it's like anything, it's a chemical. And when you're adding chemicals to humans during the periods in our lives where our brains are developing rapidly, that's a bad thing. We are at the beginning of what we are going to know about brains, period, across all types of brain research. And so there's a lot more that we will know, I think, in the future to be more specific, but we do know that it affects, it can interact with the final stages of empathy development. It can interact with memory and a couple other parts of brain development that happen during that period of time.
And community norms and the prevalence of, I guess, legal cannabis is, you'd say, part of what's driving the increase in use, you think?
Yeah, so when we are doing prevention work, and the purpose of a community assessment is to look at all the data we have and ask, if we're looking at high use rates in our community, what risk and protective factors seem to be compared differently for South County to other places, whether it's the county or the nation as a whole. And so community norms is something that we've been watching for a very long time in our prevention work, because it is one of the things that's a driver for South County.
So if it is bad for them, and it is one of the impacts of legal marijuana is there's an increase in usage, and you with your programs know how to address that with the individuals as opposed to eliminating the community norm, which is harder.
Well, so what you want to do all of it. So good public health work does shift community norms, and part of shifting community norms is even having a forum like this to talk about community norms, share accurate information about cannabis, why it's a health concern versus versus a bad behavior issue. So community norms are shiftable, and and this is a place where I also think vendors can be a really strong partner in shifting community norms in the same way that liquor stores can be effective partners in prevention around alcohol use. Because we can have a community norm that drinking is something adults do. We can have a community norm that people wait to use cannabis until they've gotten through most of the big brain development part, or people with histories of substance use disorders in their family are really careful in their families about introducing substances and how they think about it. So we actually can do a lot to shift community norms, and also that we should be working with parents around the family norms, and we should working directly with young people around having accurate information around risk, and accurate information about actually how many of their peers do use substances. And then beyond prevention, you want to make sure that you have strong pathways to support for young people who are using, and especially young people who are using in ways that are problems for them, especially from a health perspective.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you, Nanda. This is really, really helpful. It's concerning, and it's very helpful. So thank you for all the data. So obviously, in a way, the ship has sailed in terms of Great Barrington and the dispensaries. And so, then I come back to what can the town do better, or can we do better? And obviously Railroad Street Youth Project is doing an awful lot. So, is it that there's not enough to do in town? I mean, should we be looking for, adding more, recreational opportunities, or, is there anything that kids say, well, if I had, a choice to do this, or if there was more entertainment, or if there's more, do you ever hear that they're just bored, or that's one question.
All the time. And that is one of the, that's a isolation and boredom are features of rural communities that people across age groups report around how substance use ends up fitting into their lives. In terms of your question about like, what can the town do? I mean, I think that the town has done a lot right. I've been having conversations with different people in leadership positions throughout the town since before legalization around prevention. And it's my belief that people like Ed, people like Steve, I've had sit downs with you, Mark, as well. My experience is you all take information, you think about it, and you do infuse it into how you make decisions, how you shape responses, how you shape policy at the town level. And that's really important. And it changes how people talk with each other. And so I don't want to in any way state how important the work the town has done already. I think Mark has been very smart about how you've structured the community impact fund spending structure so that the town has a vehicle for prevention work, for supporting and investing in prevention, including pro-social engagement, which is the activities stuff, for a long time. I would also add, like I think, Mark, you remember this too. I grew up in this town. The message we were sending young people when I was a teenager was literally, you do not belong here, leave. The town removed benches so that we wouldn't sit on them anymore. So there's a whole other set, the protective factors. And one of the things that the town is really positioned well to do is lead on boosting protective factors at the community level around valuing youth. And part of how you do that is how you allocate funding. Like the funding is a huge chunk of the funding around prevention is going directly to spaces for youth, a school for Railroad Street for youth. And so that's a rambling answer to, I think there's a lot that can be done in thinking through, just thinking through messaging and policy and making sure that we're always sending a message that is non-judgmental, that young people, just like adults who do choose to use substances, and especially if they're using substances regularly, usually it's part of a larger picture. And there's no gain to judging that. It's just the more we can offer more options, more support for whatever else might be happening, while we're also still sending a consistent message of delay. So like at Railroad Street, we use that frame of delay, and that might mean like, can you delay trying pot until you're 21? But it also might mean for somebody who uses regularly to get through the day, it might mean, can you delay using till after school? And that will help them with their learning outcomes at school.
I had another question last. So the community impact fees, as we're coming up with host agreements coming up for renewals and discussions around that, hypothetically, if that were to go away, would this be pretty damaging to the work that's been done, or how do you feel objectively about that? Although you're not objective, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not objective, and we receive funding through the community impact fund. I think that it's a complicated question, and I think that there's a lot of stuff that's been happening at the state level that eventually will be out of our control. And so that's part of why I think the town has been really smart in thinking about how to have those impact fees be something that can offset impact for a long time. I think that what I can say is I think that it is incorrect to say there's no impact. There's no way there could be no impact. And just as there is positive impact for adults, and there should be, and that's why, like, to me, that's why we needed to legalize cannabis, because contact with the criminal justice system always has bad public health outcomes attached to it, you know, for that reason alone. So just as there's positive impacts to this policy change, it is going to have some other negative impacts, not just related to youth, but since my job is youth related, yeah, like we have some work to do on community norms. We have some work to do that we can do with vendors on parent attitudes. Vendors could partner to make sure that parents had some basic information about ways they can easily keep their own cannabis for their own use safe from their children. So, but we can't, and then the truth is, like, we can't do that work well though if we don't resource it. So my answer is yes, resources matter.
I was just gonna say, I was speaking with someone the other day, and I think we do need more things for youth in our town, because it was just talking about tourists coming here, and there really is nothing for kids to do. And if you're coming here, so obviously there's nothing to do for the kids that live here. I don't have the answer, but we need more than what we're giving, because boredom always makes you do wrong things. You know, about the old devil work and idle hands and all that good stuff. But it's true, we do need it, and there's like 700 pot shop. Doesn't help, that's a slight exaggeration, but not by much. And so I think we need to do something more for the youth. They said you come here, there's nothing to do. The people that come here are kids, so obviously our kids have nothing to do. No. We need to ramp that up.
And I have a question, and without looking at the numbers, it's hard. For years, this survey's been presented at the school level, and it's been as much about alcohol as it is about drugs. And tonight you were asked by Ed to present about drugs, but I think interesting to look at trends. And was the use of alcohol relatively stable during the same time period, or did that also increase? And I ask that because, as you pointed out at the beginning about the pandemic and change certain norms. So how was the use of alcohol during the same time period?
So the alcohol use is really the number one issue if we're talking about substances and health for teens in our community. I don't have the alcohol data in front of me. It varies, but what we were seeing over the period of time where we were seeing a steady decline as our prevention efforts expanded. So Railroad Street took over the coalition in, I think, 2013, 2015. That decline I do know that decline in cannabis use during that period stood out. We were reducing cannabis use at a rate that was not mirrored in the national data and was not standing out to us as comparable to what else was happening with other substances. The 2023 data I'd have to look at more closely. I mean, everything's going to be up from 2021 because everything was down in 2021. But I didn't look specifically at like comparing when pot shops opened, looking at the alcohol data around there and seeing if you have the same increase between 2018, 2019 and 2023.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's just that I know when you look at trends,
it's like a lot of pages, so I only pulled some of them.
I know, I get it. And I think, it's headline driving data that you've given us, and I think that's important. But I also think that we need to dig deeper into the whole report and to see if there are other trends. But and I'm not suggesting we should wait, but I think with all data, we'll have to see where those trends are in 2 years also. I'm not minimizing what you're saying. We just need to dig deeper.
I absolutely agree. And that's why I think that the best way to think about the use rate data for 2023 is like, oh, we need to pay attention. And I also think that we're still just too close to, because of the pandemic especially, we're too close to when most of our vendors opened to be able to see a trend around impact. We have data that suggests impact. It's not surprising to me. I would have like that. I expected, unless we did something spectacular to like simultaneous to vendors opening, we had a really amazing intervention we did around community norms. I expected that even with good prevention, we're going to see some increase, but it's just too short a window, especially with that lockdown period showing such clear shifts in use associated with lockdown across substances for youth.
Go ahead.
And I'll keep this first. So yeah, I did have a similar question around alcohol use, and similar to what Steve said. You know, my question is this kind of a bright, shiny object and it's new? And that's why, you know, one of the reasons why we're seeing this spike is because, you know, we have all this access and there's dispensaries, and I'm wondering if it's going to level out a little bit. So I guess, as you said, you know, it's something to watch, and, you know, I'll be curious to see down the line how that levels out, especially with alcohol being so strong as well. So I guess it's kind of a rhetorical question, but one other thing was, you know, psychosis and mental health. So, you know, the relationship of marijuana use to mental health. And are you seeing that correlation, or do you have any insight to that?
Yeah,
you know, sometimes people use because, you know, they're feeling depressed and they use, or, you know, then it brings on onset of psychosis or whatever. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, please.
So because cannabis was illegal for so long and in the class drug category that it was in, most of the research on the impact of cannabis use is very, very young. And the research starts with legalization in states at this level. So there's limited things that we can say for sure. What we do know is that we know that there is a causal link between cannabis use and schizophrenia, triggering schizophrenia. So there's an elevated risk for people who have a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia to have their schizophrenia triggered by cannabis use. So people with that genetic disposition are more likely to have active schizophrenia if they use cannabis. And onset for schizophrenia is generally between 17 and 24 for most people. So that's clear, and it's one of the few things that's super clear. There's a lot happening around the broader question of psychosis, and there's a lot popping up also around just the increased prevalence of higher concentration cannabis, whether that is cannabis that is higher concentration because of how it's being cultivated, you know, genetically over time, selecting strains, or whether that's because of edibles and especially youth possibly using much more a higher dosage at one time with edibles than they probably even realize. So we do know that ER doctors are seeing, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a specific diagnosis that has to do with how the metabolism can get impacted, especially with higher dose. And so early presenting, like pre-ER, early presenting with that is that a person might stop being able to eat without cannabis. And the later presentations of that involves compulsive vomiting, and that's what ERs see. So there's information that's happening. I think there is like more research around the prevalence of that. I have not seen anything that's like clear, but that is true. And then broadly around psychosis, I am reading about it. I'm seeing people make that link. It seems that there's also debate around it. So I feel like, I think there's something there. Among the young people we work with, they think there's something there. And I think there's more research that we need to understand exactly what that link is.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, I want to say out loud one more time, you're saying, I would agree, there is a community impact to the legal marijuana. The host agreements and the community impact fee aren't on the agenda tonight. They will be soon. So I urge you to come back if you can, and also Dr. Chang, who's in the room, and Gary from Rural Recovery might have, when we are discussing that, I'd love your input too.
I just want to add one more thing, because you mentioned Gary. I think one of the things that is often not talked about, and it's just important to acknowledge because some people are living with this experience, is that while for many, similar to alcohol, while for many people who are over 21, recreational cannabis use can be absolutely fine for a health perspective. There are people who have substance use disorders that are related to cannabis. And so just that is one other health consequence, just like it is for alcohol, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And that can be true for youth as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nanda.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Amanda and Railroad Street Youth Project in general for everything they've done. I also grew up in the time frame where they took the benches away and tried to keep us hidden in the outskirts, but and Railroad Street is just improved life for kids and my nieces and nephews and everybody. So just really appreciate the work everybody's done there. So thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Look forward to furthering the discussion.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Next, opioid settlement funds, request for select board commitment, Gary Pratt, South County Recovery Center. Hello, Gary.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for having me. I just want to continue the Railroad Street Youth Project Love Fest here too, because they're a fiscal agent, and without the Railroad Street Youth Project, I would not be standing here today asking about opioid settlement funds for the recovery center. So I know most of you, Garfield, we've never actually met. Nice to meet you. So I'm Gary Pratt, I'm the director of Rural Recovery and the South County Recovery Center. We operate at 67 State Road right here in Great Barrington. We had our opening last June, June 11th. We had a soft opening on April 1st. So technically we've been open about a year. Since we've been open, we've seen about 600 people come into the recovery center. Just in our last reporting period of, and at the end of February. So it's 6 months. September 1st to February 28th, we saw, I think it was 270 visitors to the recovery center. And I believe 73 of those were Great Barrington residents. So, and of those, I think it was 170 of those returned for at least a second visit. So, we're seeing results. We're seeing an influx of people coming into the recovery center. So I don't know how much of a history you guys need. I think you were sent the one pager of us and the frequently asked questions, but just for people at home and anybody who's not to know, we were funded in September of 2020 by the Health Resources and Services Administration of the federal government. through their rural communities opioid response program. So we received a $1 million 3-year grant, and we have several partners in this. Railroad Street Youth Project is the fiscal agent. We also partner with the Brain Center, Fairview Hospital, Berkshire Community College, and now the Southern Berkshire Public Health Collaborative and the Rural Health Network. This was a wide-ranging grant that we've been operating, and just a few of the things that we've been doing is trying to get universal SUD, substance use disorder screening in primary care settings, general education of providers, which incorporated a lot of motivational interviewing techniques to be able to ask those questions. One of the gaps that we found in the planning of this was that we found that the screening wasn't happening as much as it should have been, because providers had a hard time referring people to help once they got a positive screen. So, with the existence of rural recovery in the South County Recovery Center now, they can refer to us. And we have 2 full-time recovery coaches on our staff who can help people through the whole process of, navigating the recovery, getting into treatment, having, just building those connections and building recovery capital for themselves to make it a smoother journey in their recovery pathways. So, the South County Recovery Center itself, like I said, it's at 67 State Road. I encourage any one of you to come check the place out, and it's an absolutely beautiful space. We offer, I believe, 6 of the 7 days we have at least one recovery meeting now at the recovery center, including tonight on Monday night and Friday night. We facilitate 2-hour recovery meetings, which are well attended. At least usually 20 to 30 people show up on Friday nights, and usually between 20 on Monday nights. So those meetings are a non-denominational approach. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's an all recovery meeting where everybody is welcome. And that goes along with the South County Recovery Center as well. Everybody who's affected by substance use in any way is welcome at the recovery center. While we were initially funded for opioids, we do embrace everybody who's affected. So that includes people who are still currently using, people who are in early recovery, people who are in long-term recovery, and also friends and family members of people who are affected. So I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I've been in recovery for about 14 years. And, I'm a contemporary of Mr. Gabriel over there as well, and Amanda. And, basically the entire using history of myself, of using substances, happened right here in this town in Great Barrington. I started using here, and when I finally got into recovery, I unfortunately had to move out of Great Barrington to find the services that I needed. I ended up in Pittsfield for about 10 years, and then I moved back down here to South County. This is kind of self-serving me saying this, but I think back to 15 years ago when I was trying to maintain my very early recovery. I wish there was a place like the South County Recovery Center in Great Barrington. I wish there was something that offered alternatives to the things that had been well established in the community. And not that I'm not saying that those don't work, but there's the more options there are for people, I think the better they are, the better off they can be. So we truly embrace multiple pathways of recovery. We meet people where they're at. And when I say we meet people where they're at, it's not just mentally or emotionally, like we physically go to people. We provide service into all 14 towns in South Berkshire County. So, what we're trying to do with these opioid funds is trying to get all 14 towns in South Berkshire County to commit to sending opioid settlement funds to the recovery center, because this is it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to fund something like this at absolutely no cost to the taxpayer. So, these funds are, it's a settlement. It's a settlement from 6 different opioid manufacturers and distributors. So I believe it's Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Teva, Allergen, and Johnson & Johnson. So all of those settled these lawsuits with the Massachusetts Attorney General to, mitigate the effects of opioid use disorder. And unfortunately, it's been a big problem. It's been a big problem, and it seems to only be getting worse. I don't have a whole lot of numbers that are current right now. Like, unfortunately, opioid statistics on mass.gov are usually about 2 years behind, a year and a half to 2 years behind. What I can tell you that is in Berkshire County in 2010, there were 4 overdose deaths. In 2020, there was 62. So it's a 1,400% increase. It's a lot. And while there are certain individuals that will look at the number of 62 and say it's not that much of a number, that's 62 people. That's 62 family members and friends and colleagues and coworkers, and it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people for our small community. And just in the past couple of years, I can think of a few people right here in Great Barrington that we lost. With the recovery center here now, we operate as a referral hub as well. I want you all to understand that. We've been working on warm handoffs with basically every agency you can think of that has anything to do with human services or substance use, and we have personal relationships with these folks and these agencies. So, the days of for us, handing off a card or something, if somebody comes to us and is in need of housing, I don't just hand them a card and be like, here, call Construct, see what they can do for you. I call Jane Ralph or Courtney Kimball at Construct and have a conversation with them and hand the person over to them. And with our recovery coaches, they stick with them throughout. So, I really honestly believe that the recovery center is a tremendous asset, not only to the Great Barrington community, but South County as a whole. Because you all know that Great Barrington has been the traditional hub of South County. When people need services, they come to Great Barrington. So, I'm just so grateful to be here, and I'm just very hopeful for the future of what can happen for people that are affected by this disease, I heard earlier the discussion about other substances, alcohol and other drugs. And, I've honestly seen myself personally, my using history, I kind of look at it as substances are substances, and I don't look at the individual substances when people come looking for help. I believe once you get to that point, people are entitled to help in whichever way they're looking for it, and not dependent on which substances they were using. So, we've really come a long way here too in Great Barrington. I just want to point that out too. I think back to 15 years ago when I was trying to get help here, and when I came back here, I brought the Smash the Stigma event here to Great Barrington too. Thank you all for approving that for 2 years. We'll be back here again in September to try to do it again. But the reason, I was so happy to do that here in Great Barrington is because I personally experienced the stigma that's attached to substance use here. I personally experienced the lack of services here in Great Barrington. And one of my driving passions is that I don't believe that anybody should have to leave their home, their home area, their hometown to find the services that they need. So, the recovery center is, and hopefully will continue to fill those gaps in services and connect people to the things that they so desperately need sometimes. So, so with that, we were just respectfully asked the Selectboard to commit to channeling opioid settlement funds to the South County Recovery Center when they become available. So, with that,
thank you, Garrett. Mark, do you want to talk about those opioid recovery funds, what we know about them?
When we'll know about them?
What we know about them.
Right now, we know it's somewhere in the range of $55,000 for the town of Great Barrington. And we'll receive those funds over the course of about 10 years. So once we get firm numbers, I can come back and update you with that information, but that's what we know at this time.
Do I have a motion to, commit the opioid settlement funds to the South County Recovery Center?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
I'm just curious, do we know how it will be spent, and is there something that you can show us how you're gonna use the money, and we can look at, and we can have hands on and see?
I can get you something like that. If you need that.
I think we should.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
It's just nice to know.
yeah, I mean, initially, like, we were looking at just occupancy and, you know, utilities and things like that. This is not a huge sum of money and over the vast period. So, but it will help to supplement salaries, you know, like earlier on, you were talking about community impact funding money. Part of that money comes to fund one of our recovery coaches. So, you know, that's just one example. Pay salaries and to keep the lights on and, you know, pay for other supplies that can keep the center up and running.
On paper would be nice.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had just
yeah,
one
go ahead.
question, but
I've also remembered, I was very peripherally involved with writing the original grant. So I wasn't paid for that, and there's no conflict. I just want to say that before we vote.
Okay, fine.
just since we're here, having a senior in Monument in the high school, I was wondering how, you know, what's the level of engagement you have with the schools, if any?
Oh, yeah, so we've actually been participating in the South Berkshire Community Health Coalition since we got this grant in September of 2020. So even there were some online meetings during the lockdown. We participated in that, and then when they went back to face-to-face, we've been.
So you would actually talk to the students, like have
Yeah.
meetings there? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's kind of, it's pretty refreshing for me to be invited to that table as a quote unquote expert in the field, you know, because they value that perspective.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am the father of a senior at Monument and a sophomore at Mount Everest. So I have that dual role, and I get that both those perspectives.
Yeah.
And I get to see what that coalition is bringing to the table and the ideas that are filtering into the schools as well. And, you know, it's just been refreshing.
Yeah, well, thank you for your work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Amanda, go ahead.
To that question, I just wanted to add, so one of the ways that we try to be a good partner at Railroad Street is make sure that experts like Gary are at the table around prevention work. And then also we make sure that we're doing, like, where we're doing counseling support and recovery work, we're linked with the recovery center. So we have a recovery coach on staff who works specifically with young people. And they are starting a group called GASP that will meet at the recovery center. And so that's one of the services I can say as a community member and partner the recovery center provides, is a space for recovery groups to meet and recovery activities to happen that aren't even led by the recovery center staff. Like, they literally open the doors to the community for the things they need.
Thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you
Always
all.
enjoy it.
Gary.
Okay. Strategic Sustainability and Livability Committee, update and discussion on the future of the committee. Natalie, Giovanina, come on up.
Great. We're so excited to be here.
Always good to see you.
Yeah. Steve, would it be possible for me to have permission to share
Yeah.
slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and.
While Mark's doing that, the height of the meeting, we had 6 panelists and 24 attendees.
Did you get an invite for a panelist?
Yes. Thank you. We won't share the whole time, but that works. I'm sorry.
Sure. So our intention, and I know that you all probably knew this before we arrived, is to actually request that the committee be dissolved. So we're going to start with the request and talk a little bit about the why as we go. So just to start with the request and go back to the beginning of the committee, why we formed, what prompted us to come and ask the select board back in 2018 to form the committee. And so Natalie's going to talk about the mission and the original intentions and some of the early work and explorations and successes that were part of the early part of the committee's work. Oh, right, I'm going to do this. Okay. So can that go somewhere else? Yes, no, maybe so. Right, come in. Okay. So we wanted to start with, and this will weave into what we're talking about later, but these two statements are deeply relevant to where Natalie and I both are, and other current and past members of the committee around justice work as an umbrella term for all of the justice work that is happening and needs to happen in the world. And one is Adrienne Maree Brown, a very, very wise human who in their book, Emergent Strategy, said there's always enough time for the right work. And Dr. Bayo Akumolafte, who will be speaking next Saturday at, coincidentally, at St. John's Place, and I would be there, said the times are urgent, let us slow down. And so I thought that it would be wise for all of us, you know, it's a long day, it's a Monday. You all do this all the time, but many of us have works in jobs, and then we come here after that and we listen and we think. But just to take a moment to notice how you all are in your bodies and in your minds, and the nature of your mind right now, and the nature of your nervous system, the emotions that are present, whatever they are. And that the reason that Natalie chose this beautiful slide and we decided to start there is that sustainability work frequently invokes or evokes this idea of environmentalism, and which is tremendously important, and protecting nature and protecting the natural world. And a contemporary understanding of sustainability work is about sustaining the globe and everyone's healthy and thriving lives in the globe. And in order to do that, we need to be really deeply connected with ourselves and with our system in order to be able to think wisely and thoughtfully and to connect to other human beings on the globe, and to make relationships that forge the kinds of connections that create change that is lasting and just. So that's why we started there.
Great. So we'll pop up a few slides as we go here. So just a little bit of history. This is a screenshot from what is currently on the town website. It was about 5 years ago that there was a ban on plastic water bottles that took up a significant amount of time and energy. And then the committee and Jovina and I were at that town meeting. We're thinking a lot. We came to Ed and we started really thinking about what would it look like for the town of Great Barrington to actually form a committee to think a bit more intersectionally about the way that sustainability, racial equity, affordability, and livability are intertwined, rather than sort of looking at a single solutions approach. So we came to the board about 4.5 years ago, and we've been meeting for about four years now. This is just a little bit of our initial mission, which still lives there on the town website. And Jovina and I are going to just talk a little bit about what we've done and some of the key lessons learned that we're hoping to seed within the government bodies more holistically as we move forward. So we want to just give voice to some of the things that we did and some of the people that we had the privilege to interact with. So we had a lot of conversations. We had coffee or Zooms with many, many people. We facilitated many meetings, but here's a couple of things that have occurred. We worked with Amy in the town manager's office a couple of times to really help think through the community choice aggregation pricing process. We worked with Ed and Ed May and others.
Let me just pause there, I'm sorry. Does everyone, I was just thinking about the things, sorry, I'll get up to the one. I was just thinking about the things that we're going to be talking about, and not all, I'm not sure that everyone knows what we're talking about. So community choice aggregation, did everyone in the select board know what that
we do, but they may not, so.
Okay, yeah, so maybe say a word about that.
I'm probably not going to say it as well as you all will, because I believe you just addressed this a week or two ago, but this is the process that the town goes through to aggregate power and basically negotiate better prices for residents on electricity, as well as bringing in green energy considerations. There's more to say, but just, yeah, that's a component. I probably won't go through like a ton of detail on all of these, because this is just an illustration of some of the things that we did, but there's a process where municipal officials, including some people here, voted on it in an international process to improve the building codes. We supported some of the information flow on that happened a couple of years ago through the International Code Council. We provided recommendations to Mark and Chris in the town around LED streetlights and retrofitting. We explored affordability, a significant issue for all of us. We've had conversations with some folks around various policy approaches. We facilitated some conversations over time. We really appreciate the work that the board has done on electric vehicle charging stations that are now over there directionally. Done some work around waste reduction at the transfer station and supported some of the initiatives at Monument around sustainability, and just held so many conversations with many of you about these initiatives as they were forming or as they were going towards the board. And so that's just a bit of some of the things that we accomplished and supported. Do you want to, did I miss anything there? And we'll talk a little bit about our most significant project, which is the MVP project, as we sort of move along here. This has a lot of words on it, but we've learned a lot of things, and we just want to give voice to a few of these things. I think as the committee was forming 2018 and 2019, and as we move through today, 2023, the world has changed a lot, and our consciousness have changed significantly. We, Jovina and I, as individuals, as well as the committee members that we have the privilege to work with, the community and the nation, really have grown significantly in our understanding of the way in which these crises that we face are intertwined and interlinked. When I talk about climate change, racial injustice, systemic inequity, economic inequality. And we had the privilege of working with the Municipal Vulnerability and Preparedness Project as a project by which we could really kind of watch that evolution unfold within ourselves, within the community, and the broader world. I think we'll note that the current systems that we're working in and that we have today are inherited bureaucracies. Intersectional work is sometimes really hard to do with existing committee structures and other systems of government. They weren't always designed to really work with these very significant gravitational forces like capitalism, wealth inequality. I think that's something that we face when we try to solve really complex problems. And so we recognize that some of this work that we've come up against is around how do we shift the daily and weekly practices of the way our governments function. And this is long form work. Like, we can't fault ourselves for these systems. This is like shifting the way the government works is like taking one 90-minute nutrition class and faulting yourself for not being able to immediately change everything you put in your body. So we're noting these things as things that we've observed over time. We recognize that sort of this system of government, I think our town meeting structures have been here for almost 300 years. And let's expand our view of time. So we used MVP as a particular project, but the things that we've learned that we'll talk about, I think, can be really brought into levels of government for specific projects or just generally as we view it. So lots of words there, but those were just some of the things that we've been learning along the way.
Actually, can we take that down and then come back to it? Sure. Okay, awesome. So in the evolution of our work, started with some concrete things. The mission was intersectional. We really wanted to bring in economic justice, land justice, human justice, you know, Natalie said it more beautifully and more eloquently than I am right now. At some point, Chris Rimbold approached us about helping with the MVP grant, and there was a lot of prerequisites. Now we're on the other side of it, and there's been another one, and so you all maybe know. But the first time around, the prerequisites were extensive, like extend months and months and months. And one of the things was a community meeting or a community workshop or something like that. Some of you were there. And it was an invite only, all day long workshop or whatever, meeting, gathering.
During the workday.
During the workday, on a Thursday, from like 9 until 3 or something like this. So, and important, it was tremendously important. And so we did our best to make it as inclusive as possible. There were high school students there, there was a farmer there, but you know, think about who can get to something all day on Thursday. And so there was, you know, so there was just this awareness in the process of, and well, I'll back up and say, we also tried, there was, traditionally it was like a PowerPoint, just like this one that we're seeing right now, where, you know, everyone's sitting, just like you're in class, we all know how to do it, and watch, and then people present information about, I don't know, I don't remember what the different areas were that we focused on, tremendously important. Housing, climate events, but areas of vulnerability so that people, it was a collective learning process. So we instead had a data walk where you walk around and people were talking, and this is wonderful. There was food. At the same time, the people that were there were the people who had the privileges, all of the privileges that they needed to be there. They had to know somebody in power, right? They had to have childcare if they had children. They had to be able to get out of school. They, you know, so the people who were there were people who were known. They had power. They had privilege. It doesn't mean, you know, I'm not using those words to level any charge, but it was truly eye-opening that we started the whole process with exclusivity, something that's meant to benefit all, you know, our survival in this community. And it wasn't including everyone. Not everyone was at the table. And so this really informed us moving forward very, very deeply. And this was right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic came, and then we really saw, well, we didn't. The larger country saw in stark relief the inequities that a crisis brings about. And that were already existing, but exacerbated and just, you know, sort of like I don't know the right metaphor. So, as this started to shift, and we were really grateful, the MVP, that grant process really centers equitable engagement. And so it really mandates this kind of grant process that other grants don't necessarily do. And I don't know if I want to say anything about that. Oh, to just shift to these themes. So as part of that, many of you were very dedicated members of the grant that we got was a partnership with Multicultural Bridge. And after, and we engaged in 10 robust weeks of racial and climate justice and poverty training that was led and facilitated by Gwendolyn and also Natalie.
And Maya Richards.
And Maya Richards, yep. And so these themes came out of conversations that happened with a quite diverse group of folks. We had dinners so that people could have their kids and eat together, and we did over Zoom. And we had conversations about, you know, how instead of maybe experts or people who have power and who are thinking, you know, for and about other community members, who really tried to engage in an organic way with community members and have conversations that are relevant to us all. And so I wanted to just point out these themes exist. We really wanted to have them as posters in town hall because how beautiful would that have been? And we still can. But I wanted to start kind of, I'm not going to talk about this extensively, but just with the very last one, that climate change mitigation and preparedness is not climate justice. And the tiny words underneath that say climate justice cannot happen without addressing systems of oppression. And in order to address systems of oppression, everyone needs to be at the table. Otherwise, one is, unwittingly engaging in a paternalistic process, right? Deciding what is best or what is most helpful for other people. But if those people can't come to the table for all the reasons that people can't come to the table, even if this door is open, then we don't really know what those people need in order to be safe and in order to be supported so that their lives and their children's lives and their families' lives are safe. So, yeah, these are beautiful themes, and Bridge has been using them afterwards, which is lovely. And we could go to the next slide. So this is also, well, so maybe I'll say, why are we showing this? Maybe you're like, why are you showing these themes? Because as part of sort of the request to ask to dissolve the committee, we're also asking that you all consider some of the tremendously important and relevant takeaways from this work. So those themes weren't just about the MVP process or climate change or safety in the face of what's going to happen around climate change in our local area. They're also about trying to think within a bureaucratic 300-year-old structure. How do you not do business as usual? Because business as usual is not inclusive, and all of you know that. And so, how we would really like to robustly invite you to robustly engage in an ongoing question of, okay, so we've opted into being tremendously important people with power in this community. How do we also start to shift our practices to not just have an open door, but think about what true inclusivity would be, so that we're sitting at a table with somebody who we would never otherwise hear from, and really understand about them and their family, and have them be part of a decision-making process for the town. So this is an amazing framework, also lots of words, but basically kind of, goes from 0 to 5, where, there are decision makers, there's no access to decision-making processes, closed-door meetings, and the resource allocation is also quite important. So we have too few people really trying to make the town work well, right? You all know this. And I don't mean to laugh about it because it's not funny. There aren't enough people to do the work at hand, and there aren't enough people to do the work at hand. So on this side, we have people with power making all of the decisions, denying access. On the other side, we have community ownership, that the decisions that are impacting the lives of the community are held within the community. And it's a wonderful accountability tool to really look at, how inclusive are we? I really believe that everyone sitting at this table, these 4 tables, is deeply committed to creating a just and good and ethical town. And I think that this kind of accountability system of who are we missing, who should be at the table with us, how do I access those people, is truly in alignment with how you all live your lives and how you think about being government officials. So we wanted to bring this, and you can just Google it So we have some recommendations. I don't know, do we want to pause here? That was a lot of words.
We can pause and then we can do recommendation.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Okay, great. We're in agreement. All right. So one of the things is when a grant comes along, or if something or project comes along, or there's a deadline, or a decision needs to be made, community choice aggregation, for example. Or you hear talk of an additional plastic something ban. We're proposing the possibility of some sort of checklist for all of the boards, select board, planning board, that's like literally looking at how do you assess the process, that this process is truly inclusive of all voices and is centering marginalized voices in the community, because we know, right, that people who are marginalized are most likely to be deleteriously impacted by everything. And so if a decision is coming in front of you that is going to impact, you know, the town and the community, which almost every decision is, how are you not just being like, you know, sort of defaulting through nobody's fault really, but to urgency, to getting that grant out the door, but engaging in an equitable and inclusive process. And so we were thinking that it would be really wise to develop a checklist so that there's some stopgap measure that says, let me just not default to the way that things have been going for, you know, before you were born, and that you've inherited. Relationship building, okay, that's fine.
Oh, sorry.
No, I don't know, I was just gonna read it, but lots of words. So the second recommendation is, and they're tied together. One of the central pieces of learning from our work with Multicultural Bridge, and this is beyond their work, it's a widely held understanding, is that in order to create justice and equity, there needs to be a repair of relationships and trust developed. So there can't be an assumption that we can erase, you know, decades, hundreds of years of oppression, and everyone just comes to the table and is like, okay, let's make this decision. There needs to be repair, and that repair involves building relationships. But if that act of building relationships is really difficult because people have tremendously busy lives and their own kids and maybe a job outside of this work. And it's really hard then to dedicate the time to maybe go once a month to Railroad Streets to the Youth Operational Board on a Tuesday at 4, you know, to see and be seen. And I've had the intention to do that for like 2 years and I've never gone. So that the possibility of either grant funding or really thinking through some means of having somebody that is paid, that their job is like a relationship builder, that, and we'll get to this in a minute, but that somebody's job is to be at those youth operational boards, that their job is to go to the Rural Recovery Center and really make those relationships and have that person be the connector from the town, so that the town is, you know, has an ear on the ground, that people are knowing that the town is really listening and going to them and not, you know, asking folks to come here. The door is open, it's hard to get here. So that is also a recommendation that is included in the Growing Better Great Barrington report, with which the Agricultural Commission and the Strategic Sustainability and Livability Committee did together about many of the issues related to farming and sustainability around farming, were that there are many disparate issues and disparate systems, and no person to really bring those together and hold that and create sort of like a relationship connector. So that's also consistent with that, one of the big recommendations from that project. You want to add anything?
No, I think that point was made, but this is just, it's just a really important recommendation that we would love to just see considered either through grants or potentially a future strategic priority, because when we did the MVP work, and this comes up in so many different grants and engagement processes that we use, that all governments use, is you have something that needs to happen. You have a deliverable and you need to engage and get people's input. It's really hard to go out to people who are busy and who have competing priorities when this thing is in front of you. So if there's a way to be proactive with that relationship building and give it its own resourcing, its own space, it's just a strong recommendation and something that when we listen to community and hear from other communities on how they're engaging community-based organizations and community-serving organizations, investing within the relationships is really important. And I'll say most state and federal grants don't do this. Like it's not something that the systems are designed to do, but it's something that has come up for us and we want to just really uplift it. And so I just wanted to put a fine point on that.
No, I wanted to actually add something as a specific example of this. When we were having conversations around the Growing Better Great Barrington project process, there was a conversation with a member of the Multicultural Bridge staff, and I'm forgetting her name right now, unfortunately. And we were talking about surveys and people going to a community and being like, hey, we have this grant, we have this wonderful project. Like, what do you think? And that's great, but it can feel quite extractive. And it's like a conversation that gets started, right? And you're like, oh, I'd love to have your thinking. And then that thinking, you know, you take that information and take it away and then never come back to the relationship, or never come back to like, you know, so instead of a relationship building and that then there's this trust that it's not just about like using your thinking or using your, you know, just using your thinking or using your opinion, but that it's something that's lasting and sustained. And I mentioned this person who I am unfortunately forgetting her name, because she spoke to that actually quite clearly, that like, it's great when people come and talk about, you know, how does the immigrant community in South County relate to farming or local food, but then nobody comes back and continues that conversation and makes it relevant and meaningful for their lives.
And we just have one final recommendation, which is a bit more tactical, and then I think we'll finish our ramble and just journey through some of our thoughts and observations. And I know Chris is also on the line, and we may ask him if he wants to add anything. Just a last recommendation here is one of the topics that has had significant interest from community members, from members of our committee, from Rebecca with the health board, and Dr. Chang, who's here, is around compost. There's something about this compost project that we've put a few different ideas out there. There's a lot of community interest in this. This is something that can build community, reduce waste, and also, you know, reduce methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. It has an intersectional feel, and it's something that we would really hope that the town would consider, and we want to keep supporting and moving it through. We don't need to talk about maybe the specifics of this project at this moment in time, but we would love you to keep your eyes open for the liveliness behind this project, because this is I think a door that is opening that could really allow some pathways for deeper work, community building around an intersectional view of sustainability to kind of move forward. So I believe those are our 3 recommendations. And I think with that, we will close, see if maybe Chris has anything to add on Zoom, and then see if there are any questions. I think, oh yeah, folks know how to contact us, but you can contact us via email if there are any questions. So I'll stop the screen share and you can see if there's questions.
Are you going to talk about water?
I just thought about that. I was like, we didn't say.
I mean, I have a sense of other people might want to know.
Right.
Of the committee, because we have loved doing this work, but we are full-time working people running our own businesses. And while we've had a lot of interest at the beginning, the interest has waned. We haven't been able to have a quorum, and we haven't been able to find members to join the committee who have this expansive view, or really almost anyone who wants to join the committee. And I think our energy is petering out, not for this work in general, but I think to run the work in this way. And I think to put a finer point on our recommendations, we were trying to do a lot with like very little time, very little, you know, like a committee has some power, but really not much. And so we were hoping to allow some of these ideas and recommendations to permeate through the higher levels of government. And we would love to continue to be supportive and support these ideas in moving through, but we're not sure that, for at least for us, that this committee is the right medium for moving these things through. Hopefully that's clear. Definitely. We've been very appreciative of the time. You know, we've come to many meetings and you've all given us a lot of your time and energy over the years, and have a lot of gratitude for that.
You know, if we don't dissolve the committee, you guys have to keep doing it. That's
So do I have a motion on their recommendation?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to dissolve the committee.
Second.
So motion to dissolve the Strategic Sustainability and Livability Committee. Any discussion?
Just, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as far as recommendation number 3, the town posting, it has been something that in other committees we've been discussing as well. And I do agree that I think there's like kind of a ground swelling and people understanding that, and a lot of good information out there on how it's something every household can have a big impact with. So I appreciate you putting that up there as one of your recommendations.
And not now, I mean, not tonight, just for the interest of time. And but we do have some thoughts. And actually, we had a wonderful conversation with Ed some months ago, just really thinking about how that could be, how compost, strangely, could be a means of creating community connection and community resilience and strength. So there are definitely some creative ideas that, you know, for, you know, future conversation. And I know either of us would be happy to have that conversation. And Aretha, who's also a committee member, wasn't able to be here tonight, but she's been sort of holding that. So, and I know Mark Phillips might be, I'm not sure if he's on the, but yeah, there are people that if there's a conversation you'd like to have, it happy to.
Sounds good. I'll be in touch. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for all that work. And it was a lot.
Yeah, we absolutely appreciate everything. And hopefully you'll stay around so we can.
Yeah, I mean,
we're
not saying we don't want to do any more work. We don't want to help or support or think, you know, be thinking partners or collaborators. Yeah.
The changes to the building code, is that process finished?
It comes every 3 years.
I think it's every 3 years. There's another process coming, but I don't have the details on exactly what.
Because I was the designated person from here, and it probably ought to shift ideally someone who understands what a building code is.
Ed May voted on it.
Right, but I think I did too.
Yeah, and he will get the emails, but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's generally a process where you can change your registrants.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Well appreciated for all your work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for listening to our recommendations. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Citizen speak time. Charlie Williamson.
Good, but he goes one after the other, so you're next.
Yes, he needs to come to the podium, which I'll never be with.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Charles Williamson, 48 Blue Hill Road. I just want to restate something I said about 2 months ago when you had a meeting on the Housatonic water and the Great Barrington water. I brought up that the town could get a hold of the federal EPA to check the Housatonic water system. It's our tax money is going to pay for the EPA, And it's under the Clean Water Act that all communities are guaranteed clean and safe drinking water. That was the first thing, and I think it got lost in that meeting. I just wanted to bring it up again so you hear it. And the second thing I wanted to bring up, and go back to that first one, is that the federal EPA, they went into Jackson, the capital of Mississippi, and they did extensive work there. I think the fix was around 880 million. I'm not saying that's what Housatonic is, but the government did this free. They didn't do the paying for the upgrade, but they did all the work that had to be done. And then the second thing I brought up, and I think maybe the town might want to think about it, is that maybe have our Board of Health take a look at the last 30 years, the deaths in Housatonic, and see if there's a higher rate of cancer death or other types of death in the community of Housatonic versus the national average. I think that'd be useful for the people to know and get more public and even federal help to get something fixed, because everyone knows that water is no good. A blind man can see the problem. Those were the only two things I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Right.
Ruby, you need to come up to the podium if you want to speak.
Oh, sorry. So,
Name and address.
Ruby Chang, 253 Long Pond Road. I'm here as a citizen or resident, and also as a physician for the town for the past 10 years as primary care. I'm also here as Board of Health member. And I wanted to thank these ladies for all of the work they've done. As you all know, that book took a lot of work and a lot of heart to get it into action. And I would like to take up that baton and try to have the board understand there's a hole that needs to be filled from all of their work. It needs to be continued. And so we need the right people to get together to do it. And so we do need some sort of a committee or an advisory board that can continue the work of sustainability and environmental health. That could either be an advisory board underneath the Board of Health or under the DPW. But the work has to get done. We can't keep kind of kicking the bucket down the road. So we do have people that are interested who are willing to do the research and willing to do the work, but you need to appoint them in the right position so they can continue their work and continue their fervor and their heart into the work. So the work is not going to get done in this town. I'm sorry, but it's not going to get done unless something is done about it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so composting is something that I've taken up since fall of this year. I've gone to see compost sites in Sheffield. It is a place to die for. I think they do a wonderful job there. And Great Barrington should be the leader of South County, but we're not. If you look at our recycling center, there's a lot to be desired. That place could be a community center. It could be a place where people gather, get to know each other. I used to live in Leverett. In Leverett, everybody knows the recycling center is the center of the town. That's where we go to swap out things we don't want and pick up things we do want. That's a place where we go to dump our garbage every month or every week, and where we get the local gossip. And we don't have that. Right now, we barely can get past each other to get to the place and get out of there as fast as we can. So I'm hoping that the select board will be helpful in providing support and having a committee that can help us sustain environmental causes moving forward, and then
we can get the right people to help with this cause.
Thank you, Ruby. Claudia Shapiro?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, Claudia Shapiro, 78 Egremont Plain Road. Please incorporate into the record. I've been requesting the decision and findings of fact for the airport special permit granted April 10th, due within 14 days, being today. So I again requested the decision and findings to be denied. So I'm, for the record and for my record, publicly requesting the April 10th airport special permit decision and findings due today, April 24th, 2023, sent to my email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. They'll be sent to you when they're ready. Nancy, name and address, please.
Yes, Nancy McConnell, 1066 Main Street, Housatonic. I am speaking tonight to again highlight the need to understand whether or not Great Barrington is willing to rescind its support of using public funds for the intervenor voted upon during the March 27th Housatonic Rest of River Committee. The intervenor would undermine the U.S. First Circuit Court of Appeals case brought by two Berkshire's environmental organizations, the Housatonic River Initiative and the Housatonic Environmental Action League, and their efforts to stop GE's Berkshire's toxic dump. I was told my questions couldn't be answered in the last meeting because they were not on the agenda. Fair enough. So I submitted my request for them to be placed on this meeting's agenda less than 24 hours later. I did not receive any acknowledgement of my request from any select board member, the town manager, or the assistant town manager. And of course, the topic is again not on the agenda. I am aware that I am not the first person to make a similar request. This is a continuation of the lack of transparency for the public on critical decisions being made about the toxic dump. I am aware that Lee's Select Board has now requested to meet with you in an open meeting on the same matter. If you have not done so already, I urge you to accept this invitation. And I would like to tie back to one thing that the Strategic Sustainability and Livability Committee referenced when their key recommendations. The key recommendation number 2 is to have meetings that are accessible to people so they may attend where decisions impacting their lives are being made. The Rest of River Committee does not do this. So I ask that you do so when you meet with Lee, should you, and hopefully you do accept the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Name and address? Yeah, that's good.
Giovanna Padano, 74 Division Street, Great Barrington. I didn't know, I had a process when Ananda was talking before. Could I have asked a question? Or, oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll just share it with you all and put it in your minds for the future. You know, one of the, I am a social worker and a therapist. I do not specialize in substance use. And so this question more just comes as a person. One of the thoughts about both legalizing and normalizing substance use is to decrease extreme or harmful use. Again, I'm not an expert. This is not I'm not an expert in the field. So I'm wondering if Ananda from her worker from Railroad Street's work at, just has any thoughts about that, right? Like parents who are giving their children now that it's legal, like, does that decrease in any way extreme or more harmful use would be a question that I would have, just to add to the percentages that we're seeing.
Thank you very much. Okay, select board time. Garfield? I'm sorry. Oh, Ruby, you've already spoken quickly, please.
To answer her question, Ruby Train, 253 Long Pond Road. From my experience, the children don't get it from going to stores and buying them because they can't. They get them online, they get them from their friends, but mostly they get them from their parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles who are growing cannabis, and then they use it regularly and they freely give it to their children. So I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Anything, Selectboard?
I'm not thinking.
Fair?
Yeah, I got just one thing for the board. I just want to make reference to a letter that we received today from Pat Hollenbeck about the Ramsdale Library.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask Mark to reconsider his signing of a letter of intent for the grant for that building.
There's a problem there because it needs to be signed by Friday.
Yep.
It's not on the agenda today. We have to give him the permission to sign that. We have to endorse it.
Yeah.
So if the library trustees had come earlier, we could have done that, but we don't have time.
We don't have time. Could we make a motion now?
It's not on the agenda. Open meeting law, we're not allowed. I mean, if we could have another meeting this week.
Yeah.
I'm not available.
Yeah.
But it's.
Can I do citizen speak?
Prove it very quickly.
I'm on the library trustees
Yes.
too.
Yes.
So, as we had a discussion on the library trustees with our last meeting, and the result was, I just want to report to you that we had discussed it, and I know that Patrick has his heart on trying to get this signed, but there are certain recommendations that needs to be fulfilled. We can sign a letter of intent, but then we have a year or less than a year to put in what we actually want. And we would have to come up with about $2 million through grants and contributions. So I think that Ramsdale really needs to have an overall reconstruction. And I really want this on the agenda because I think it's very important for the town of Police Department. And also for people who use it as a community center.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the library trustees need to come to us. Patrick needs to come to us and start the discussion for next year.
And
it's every 4 years.
Well, whatever it is, we can't, Mark has to have, we have to give Mark the authorization to sign it. And we don't have a meeting between now and Friday. So to send it to us today was just way too late.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess that was just to finish my thought. I guess I would say, you know, just to sign the letter of intent and then just so we can have a thorough open discussion about it throughout the board, I think would be helpful, you know, and like he says in the letter that doesn't mean we're obligated to move forward with it, but it does open up the discussion for everybody. You know, in theory, everybody to be at the table, like we were kind of discussing earlier today. So I guess if there was a way, I would like to just have that conversation stay open and just see, you know, I know we're asking for a lot, but I think it would be helpful just to have full transparency and communication on the topic and see where it goes. And if it didn't go anywhere, because, you know, we have until 2025, at least we would be even more prepared for the next round. So, other than that, thank everybody who came tonight.
Yeah, just, you know, the obvious last meeting, it's been an honor to serve for 9 years. I want to thank my fellow board members and people for voting for me again and again. And I'm not going anywhere, so I'm still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Blake?
So thank you, Ed.
Thanks for your work, Ed.
See you in town.
Yeah.
Media time. By unanimous consent, we are adjourned.